Welcome to Chandwell. My name's Michael and I'm building a low-relief Victorian hotel for behind my station. In this episode I will be showing the complex roof and the raised stonework relief that I added to the walls. You may also notice something rather fancy on the windows, but more of those later. If you like following along with this build, please do me a favour and press the thumbs up button. This really does encourage me to continue making these videos. So let's get straight on with part 12, roof, relief and railings. I added curtains to the windows of the ballroom building and was just left with adding the roof. This one was going to be complex. It's a hipped mansard roof with a gabled section, 2/3 of its width. Using my no maths approach to roofs, I had a kit of 6 completely different roof faces and a couple of supports. I started by dry fitting them to work out if they at least looked like they would fit. They did, but I needed to make some adjustments where my inner framework wasn't aligned properly. This dormer window will be a challenge. I wasn't sure whether to cut it off and add it after the roof, but in the end I decided to cut the roof piece to go around the window. These bits looked promising, so I dived straight in and glued them into position with a couple of internal supports. I had intended to make this tiny part of the wall part of the front and wrap it without any edges showing, but I forgot and ended up having to add a little bit of stone texture here as a separate piece. Resting the other pieces of the roof on top, it did look like that I was onto a winner. I just glued the face directly onto the supports and hoped for the best. The side on the right fits inside the shell of the building to represent the parapet of the building itself. I was pleased that it slotted into the guides that I made last month. I needed to cut a notch from the hipped front face so it would fit under the long piece. I used PVA glue and then taped it together with electrical tape while the glue set. I noticed a bit of a gap here, but I carried on regardless. Finally, I was really pleased that the last piece slotted onto the roof and I managed to get the whole thing made on the first attempt. I used more tape to hold all the pieces in place while the glue dried. It's clear to see that the front of the ballroom building is not quite square. There's a gap of about 2 mm at one end of the roof, and it really is noticeable in this shot. It's not noticeable at all from a more natural viewing angle, so I decided to just paste the tiles over the hole. Here are the first 2 strips in place. It seems to work. I built up the scale scenes tiles strip by strip. I wasn't sure what kind of texture to use on the flat top bit. I settled on this generic kind of thing which I just slotted into the gap. I still need to add the other dormers and the chimneys, but on the whole I think that the roof has worked well. I love the tympanums on the Real Hotel in Bradford and I wanted to try to add something similar in Chandwell. I printed some guides onto sticky label, one for each of the 2 layers of relief and one for the circular window surround. I stuck this to Weetabix packet. Note the rectangular borders, these come in handy later. I cut the interiors out. I find cutting circles easiest by crisscrossing the circle like cutting a pizza. This makes removing the interior much easier than trying to do it in one go. Next, I take the cover layers, which are printed onto my standard photo paper. These are also in rectangles, which are exactly the same size as the rectangles on the guides. These line up perfectly and allow me to glue the cover into the right place on the base. Holding the component up to the light lets me check that it's all aligned properly. I then slice around the inner edges and fold the texture tightly around the inside of the triangles. When the triangle is cut out, its inner edges look like they're the same stone and makes the whole thing look solid. There is a larger triangle and a slightly smaller one. I use a scale model scenery right angle jig to help me align one atop the other. And I think that it looks absolutely lovely. I follow a similar approach to the circular window surround. I colour the exposed edges with a pen, and I think that this is the smallest and most fiddly individual component I've made so far. In situ on the hotel, I do wonder if it's a bit overscale. I maybe made it 0.5 mm too thick, but it's okay. A bit of relief on the side of a building can make all the difference. I printed some stone texture in 1, 2.5 and 3.5 mm widths. I used a glue stick to paste this to Weetabix packet. Because the strips are so thin, You need to be extra careful to coat the whole surface of the card in glue. Bending down and checking the reflection helps you work out if you've missed a spot. With the strips cut out, I use a marker to colour in the exposed card edge a similar colour to the texture. I just fold the strip to go around the corner so as to avoid any visible joins. The 1mm strip is very fiddly. It's almost like a string of card. Weetabix packet is very rigid, but it still can bend and flop. I apply a bead of PVA on top of the wide element, and I carefully place the thin strip of cereal packet on top. The PVA remains slippery for a decent length of time to allow adjustments. The hotel in Bradford has these beautifully ornate cast iron Juliette balcony railings. I had been wondering for months how I was going to make them. I eventually got talking to Justin at Scale Model Scenery, and he agreed to see what he could do with his laser cutter. I was absolutely flabbergasted to receive these a few days later. These are about 5mm tall and are almost exactly like the railings on the Midland Hotel. I tried painting them, but I couldn't get the coverage to be complete without clogging up the holes. So in the end, I coloured them in with a Sharpie. By moving my pen in each direction over the railing, I seem to have covered each edge of the railings. The camera cruelly points out some bits that I've missed, but these are invisible to the naked eye. I stuck them to the raised parts of the stonework, and they have finished off the faces of the building superbly. Justin sent me these at no cost, but they are now available on the Scale Model Scenery website in both N scale and 00 for £5.99 a packet. I never knew that laser engraved card could be so finely detailed. It truly is astonishing. This episode isn't sponsored by Scale Model Scenery, but I do want to say a genuine thank you for their help. I couldn't have made these railings any other way. The hotel has now taken me 140 hours across 112 days and has cost £23.69, not including the free pack of railings. If you're interested in the way I made the roof elements, you may find this video interesting. You don't need any maths to make roofs, even as complex as this one. I'm back onto that roof next week. There are dormers to add and a pair of impressive chimneys. So until then, thank you for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.